Hello, everybody, and welcome to Crushing Comics. I'm your host, Peter, known throughout the internet as Crisis with a K, and I'm here with two of my favorite comic fans in the world, even though they're nowhere near me in the world, to talk about this week's introduction to the brand new X-Men event, X of Swords. So on one side here, I have Tyler. Tyler, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm actually excited about an X-Men event, which is always a nice place to start. And
Mm-hmm.
also down below, we have one of our channel's favorite guests, Fariha.
How are you, Peter, today?
I am, I sometimes can be a little cynical about X-Men stuff, and I'm cynical about parts of this, but I'm also excited about parts of it too.
I never noticed you being cynical about X-Men stuff.
Oh,
this is new. This is
never
brand new information.
Yeah. So full-on warning for you all. This is full spoilers territory. We're assuming you've either read X of Swords 1 or X of Swords Creation 1, or you want to read it, or you don't want to read it, and you just want to hear us talk about whatever the case. We're going to spoil all sorts of stuff right up until this week and stretching back into the annals of comic book history. And the other thing to say is that for those of you who watched this last year in HiX-Men Report, we're not going to dissect every panel, but we're going to get into a little bit about what works and what doesn't work about the series. Sound good? So Fariha, being our newer mutant, what was your initial reaction to this? Was it good, bad, indifferent? Where do you fall?
So I think like the first 20-something pages, I was kind of thinking that, where's this going? What's going on? What's happening? Who are these people? Like, I had so many questions, and I also kind of knew that I'm like, this will be good to have that discussion. But as the pages went on, it started to make sense, and then it started to kind of fall into places, especially having read Excalibur yesterday, like all 12 issue yesterday, helped so much better. So I'm kind of excited to talk about it because, and also, as you know, that don't usually read like issue by issue. I'm usually waiting for the whole event to be over. So I think that is also causing me a little bit of clutch because, having like not knowing the next information is like, what does this mean? But I don't know. Let's see how this goes.
All right. So Tyler, yay, nay, what is your general feeling after having read this issue?
It's kind of average right now. So I was pretty excited with the Free Comics Book Day preview. And then when we came to the prelude, Excalibur 12 was kind of not good. X-Men 12 was a info dump. And then this one was kind of a mix. There are elements in there that I really like. And then there are some elements which kind of I'm not sure. I'm not 100% buying it right now.
Well, we might be in the unusual situation where I like an issue the most, but we'll find out about that shortly.
Yeah.
So I have one thing before we actually get into the content of an issue. This is the beginning of a direct crossover. I call things direct crossovers, and that's like a term I think from reading in the 90s, especially if Tyler remembers it too, where it's like it's going to go from book to book. It's not just one event book. This is an event kickoff, and then it's going to trade around all the various X-Men titles. And of course, this is a famous hallmark of X-Men stories. Batman and Superman and Spider-Man all did it a ton in the 80s as well, but it's way less common in recent years. I mean, I've read every Marvel and DC comic for the past 5 years, and the longest direct crossover I can think of is maybe like 6 issues. These mega crossovers just do not happen this way anymore. Fariha, can you even remember like the last one you've read where it's been multiple titles kind of inter-threaded to each other directly, not just as tie-ins?
I think it was also another X-Men title. I think Messiah Complex is the one that I recently read when I was reading X Factor by Peter David. And then it was just like that. Like it's like so many things were happening, so many teams involved. And it's like a one big story, which is, I like it much more than the so-called events that gets pushed out. So I am kind of super excited to see how this 22 issues crossover plus the 2 prelude takes us.
Tyler, what about you? I think the last one, the last big one was probably like Battle of the Atom, I would think.
Yeah, I would think that is the one. But the one that stuck in my mind as the most recent one would be Second Coming, I think. Yeah,
which I love.
I mean, I love that one. That one was pretty tightly knitted. I mean, the story flows from one issue to the next, regardless of the title. And I loved it because I started buying floppies. My very, very first X-Men floppies was Extinction Agenda. So that was like the very first one where Havoc was like breaking apart the uncanny X-Men label. That was my very first issue. So I have I have nostalgia for crossovers, and I really like them so much more than events.
I do too. I think something interesting, and this can be our first big topic, is events can tend to have a homogenizing effect, right? Because it's like one author, no matter how many other people are kind of contributing it with them, unless it's one of these multi-author events like Avengers versus X-Men was, it's one person. So they write voices a certain way, they have certain characters that they use certain ways. And that always worries me, especially with somebody who has idiosyncrasies like Hickman, that certain characters aren't going to really hit for me or land for me. And that, if we think back to last year, was one of my big problems in House of X, is that I just felt like everybody kind of talked like a Greek chorus and sounded the same. But with a direct crossover, you get all the authors with the characters that they love, and then the characters they most want to play with from the other books. And I think it just gives like a little bit more of a diverse read to what it sounds like. Even in this issue, it should be remarked upon, this is not just a Jonathan Hickman jam. Tini Howard co-wrote this, one of the few women in Marvel history to be co-writing, let alone piloting, a Marvel crossover event. And I feel like there is a distinct difference in the voices of the characters here compared to a typical Hickman comic book. Tyler, would you agree or disagree with that?
No, I agree with that. I find certain voices pretty on point, and and that is not usually the case with Hickman. Given that I have sampled across the board of his writing in like X-Men 1 to 12, and then the giant size X-Men, all the 5 issues, you can tell when it is a Hickman dialogue and when it is not a Hickman dialogue.
Yeah, I feel like that too. I don't know. I mean, you love Jonathan Hickman. He is your future comic universe husband. Is he? So you don't have the level of problem with it that I do. But did this feel Hickman-y to you? Did it feel a little different to you?
No, it did feel Hickman-y in terms of like the scope, because so much was going on, and then so many things I am assuming are new things, because not knowing, I'm being a new mutant, it's kind of hard for me to kind of see what's new and what's been established. But the thing is, like, especially with the charts and with all these different factions and everything coming together, it did feel that. But it also felt like anytime Apocalypse was talking, he sounded a little bit more like Excalibur Apocalypse. So I think that's like, the voice kind of coming through over there. So yeah, I mean, it's a little harder for me to kind of know that, given that I know a little bit less about X-Men lore. So,
Sure. And I actually want to talk next about this idea of like what's truly new here or not. But one thing I noticed was, I think if you want to prepare for this, some of the key issues you can go back and read is definitely Powers of X4, definitely X-Men #2 from this run, and definitely that one page from Marvel Comics 1000 if you happen to have spent all the money on that, because they're really good source material. And in reading X-Men 2, which had Cyclops, Rachel, and Cable, all of whom are in this, they just sound really different. Like it was like whiplash going from that issue to this issue and being like, wow, like Rachel just sounds more like the Rachel that I'm used to. She's one of my favorite characters. And I don't think we have to be like burdened by like having somebody need to reference all of their continuity, but she just sounded a little bit kind of like that tough, semi-acerbic Rachel that I know from Claremont, from Alan Davis. So that kind of put me at ease. And I think that's definitely a Tini Howard influence compared to how we've seen Hickman writer already, personally.
So you mentioned like some of the older, like, referencing some of the older issues that are new, like within the last year.
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to be any helpful to go back to the old Excalibur or any of the other older things? Because Marvel are putting out the Excalibur omnibus, and I was trying to think about it. Is there any link to that?
Mm-hmm. Well, one huge link. I mean, Tyler, I think that's one of your favorites, right? It's one of my all-time favorite comics.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Especially, I mean, I remember Alan Davis' second long run on the book, especially because that was really, really good. Yeah. And so that was the other thing. But I mean, it's tough because the tone is very different, because the book is, Excalibur under Claremont and Davis, and under Davis himself, is a little bit more fun, and it's a little bit more, not so serious, and they don't deal with too much of these human hating us and things like that. They touch upon
that's
it, but not a
not
lot.
really a thing in his
Yeah.
Excalibur. But here's what is a thing in his Excalibur. Here she is even holding a card. Saturnine. So she looks a lot like Emma Frost. She maybe does a little bit more of like a blow dry wave in her hair and wears a higher collar than Emma Frost. Those are your signals. But so it's worth pausing for a moment on that. She's actually a creation from Captain Britain pre-Excalibur. I think she may be an Alan Davis creation. So she has a lengthy history, and we have not seen her for a while now. And to have her kind of be here as a feature character I think it's wild that we've got like an event book in the year of our Lord 2020 that's built around Saturnine. I just think it's crazy.
But I always confuse her with Courtney Ross.
Me too. And I don't know that I'm the expert there.
I'm not either. So sorry, we are going all the way back to old Excalibur.
Yeah, and actually not Alan Davis. Yes, not Alan Moore. Dave Thorpe and Alan Davis created her. Her first appearance was in the Mighty World of Marvel Superheroes 381, which was a UK comic. So none of you have probably ever owned that and read that unless you lived in the UK. Who's watching? But here's the thing, roundaboutly, to say to Fariha. Otherworld is pretty much the grand central station of the Marvel Universe. Through Otherworld, they created this idea of the 616 universe because there's so many Captain Britons and they're all numbered, and ours was 616. So this whole idea of using Otherworld as the hub to get us across to this lost world, not only is it rooted in 30 plus years of Marvel continuity, but it's very Hickman. It's very Secret Wars. It's very on brand for our boy.
Yeah.
It feels to me, especially I know you know the Fantastic Four run well, it feels very much like Hickman just kind of bringing back his whole like councils of reeds and they go through the bridge. Like it's just one of these themes that he really likes, bless his heart. And this is how he got there here. But here's what's different is this idea of like a world on the other side. I don't think he's really dealt with that a lot. It feels more like Marvel Cosmic with like the Cancerverse stuff. I don't feel like Hickman usually deals with this idea of an unknown destination, or even currently in Immortal Hulk with Al Ewing kind of playing with like the green door and what's beyond the green door. And we got our first hints of that back in HoxPox with this idea of like Apocalypse was there when the world was torn asunder, and Krakoa a long time ago lost its mate. Was that kind of present in your mind as you were reading this, or did you need a refresher to kind of be like, oh, that's what we're talking about?
I kind of thought about that when I was reading X-Men 2 or 3, whenever the first time the summoner arrived. That's when I was kind of thinking about it. I'm like, oh, where did I heard about that before? And then kind of just did a quick quick Google search. I'm like, okay, that was the first time. But the thing is, like, in terms of making a connection that way, I wasn't kind of thinking about that. There's just so much information, you guys.
It was a lot. Well, I have some other things I want to talk about plot-wise, but Fariha, you kind of keep mentioning so much information. So what were some of the other things that to you just jumped out as, wow, that's a lot?
Like there's the externals, which are somehow different than the eternals.
The difference is Rob Liefeld.
Yeah.
And maybe he was watching Highlander one night, and
which has
like,
swords.
And this is like, this is a great idea. Look, I'm gonna make it my idea. I'm just put it into X-Force.
So Tyler tends to be a really good like note taker, receipt haver. So I want to actually turn this over to you for a second. I had to remind myself in rereading these kind of lead up issues that Summoner was a little bit of an antagonist at first, and his kind of heel turn here to be like, I'm stabbing you in the back was actually really plain for us to see. And I think we kind of forgot it because he was playing chess with Rockseid, at least I did. But that seems like it was set up really clearly in X-Men 2, and Apocalypse just wanted to like him, which is new for Apocalypse, like be nice to somebody. But is that true? Do you feel like the deceit was there all along?
Well, I didn't see it in X-Men 2 in particular because that was the first time he appears, and
Right.
he's supposed to be someone from another world. But when he started playing chess with, I think it was the first couple of issues in X-Men 11 when he was,
They begin the
talking
game,
about
yeah.
the game and like testing weakness and things like that. That was when I found it really creepy. Like when he was like, "Oh yeah, how do we play this game? You just sit down and start playing the game." And what's the aim of the game? Well, we're just trying to understand each other and figure out what your weakness is. So why would you want to play a game like that with someone who is magical and from another world? Like, you have no idea what that is. So that was the part which sort of like, oh, okay, what is happening here?
Well, and I also think that something I really am starting to enjoy about this run now that we're a year in is they're taking a lot of things with symbology that we might already know about, like tarot cards, which I actually happen to be, I have a whole shelf of tarot cards right to the side of this computer, or chess, where it kind of like reminds us of things like kind of sacrificing a piece to get a stronger piece into place, or the tarot cards kind of being different if they come up inverted or not. And it's giving us these outside hints from kind of game systems, which is different than just relying on Marvel history or something insular. It kind of allows people who know a little bit about these things, and I'm certainly not an expert in tarot or chess, to kind of come from outside and see kind of what's happening. And I think very much the summoner thing is very like chess. It's like very sacrifice a piece to draw somebody in, or make it look like you're at risk to pull the other player's strong piece and then take them out. And that was very much what happens in the Sex of Sword issue.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said about how Hickman was trying to sort of like, cover our eyes, because the data page in X-Men 12 and the data page in X-Men 2 on the summoners, they look exactly the same if you don't read carefully. And then when you start reading carefully, you're like, oh wait, this is 5 here, that is 1 here, and the total is 6. And then this is talking about Araco, and that's talking about Ameth. So it's totally different. So now you know that there are 2 fractions on the other side, and they are fighting each other. And then and that is, I think, also a huge hint as to the betrayal, if you want, if you would.
I kind of felt for his deceit, though. I kind of felt for his deceit. Like, I bought in that, he's like a victim of something. Like, and then the fact that, because like when the first X-Men 2, when that data page was there, their numbers were slashed, like, now remains. I honestly thought that they were killed off or something like that. I also thought that, oh, these are the same page. I'm like, ooh, but these people are like, there's a higher number. But then when you pointed out that if you add them together is the same, that's when I was like, oh, maybe something. But I really loved how that was revealed, like, that he's not he's not, whatever he's saying is not true. Like, it was really well done. We were going to talk about it, but I thought that really blew out. Like, whoa! Even though part of me was like, maybe not,
Well, and I think it does a really interesting kind of positional thing where we just are led to assume that it's kind of this pincher attack of the old Horsemen, and from one side pushing through Otherworld, and then kind of the X-Men pushing the other side, and they're going to meet in the middle and like hug or something, and that they're both going to then fight against the evil bad guys and against Otherworld itself. And it's just the way the narrative is set, the way it bounces back and forth. It really sets them up like they're forces that are moving together to not to collide, but to kind of intersperse. And then that moment of collision, I was like, okay, it takes a lot to like really make me go, ooh, while I'm reading comic book, but like they really got me. And then I went back and kind of reread. But before we get too deep into the factions on Otherworld and from Morocco, I want to talk about the faction somewhere close to home, which is the Quiet Council, which I've come to really get excited every time they're shown. Now that Kate is alive again, this is the full Quiet Council. And they're basically like admonishing Apocalypse for opening up this special external gate. And then Doug is like, no. Krakoa says this other thing, which made me immediately think of Powers of X4, where Doug pretty much mocks colonizer Xavier to be like, oh, I'm sure you think you have an empathetic language with him, right? Xavier friend. And but here's what Krakoa is actually saying. And that's where we first get the story. And the scene mirrors it here, because Doug's like, Krakoa says no. And then they try to like be pleasant about it, like, I'm sure Krakoa, and Doug's like, no. Blocked. Denied.
So the very first interaction with Krakoa, Doug was asking him, say, well, what do you think? It's just one question. Well, and Krakoa said, I acknowledge and accepts the gift of the external gate. And Doug was like, really? That's it? And then Krakoa said, yes. So basically,
Wait, are you translating the Krakoa language?
Yeah, I translated it.
I thought it was just gibberish.
No, it's not. It's
Oh my gosh. Do we need more languages, Hickman? What are you doing?
no, but this one is really easy because it's really almost one for one. And then like only in later panels, I think Doug added in additional lines which were not there. So
unreliable
I don't know what is happening. Yeah.
I really liked when Doug said, all right, damn, you don't have to be that way about it.
I love that addition. Like, sometimes like translators will kind of take stuff out because they don't want to, insult the other party. So it was kind of like that. Like the Quiet Council is like, I'm in love with them. Like I want to see more issues of them, just bickering. Especially when Sinister is like, yeah, then we close the door behind you. Now this meeting is interesting. Like it's just so much. It's so much fun. And then the thing is they're just bickering constantly like old couple. And the thing is like it's like I don't know if there was ever a time like we would think that Apocalypse, because of his decision that he just done, he's gonna get told off by all the other people. Like, how could you do this? Like to me, that was just like
right, like admonishing Apocalypse. I'm like, oh wow, this is not something I ever thought we would see in an X-Men comic.
It just feels like they're all equal in a way. Like you would never think that that he would probably get a pass because he's in the higher tier, but that's not the case. Even though it was kind of Magneto who was telling him that, hey, you like why, but then Apocalypse kind of went into the whole route of ask for forgiveness instead of permission. Like I'm like that's the best policy to have job.
No,
I thank you, sir.
The other thing I like about this is really nothing to do with the council itself. Is that Kate actually has gloves on because she has the knuckles, kill Shaw. So she's trying to hide the fact that, like, oh, that's my plan. So she has like gloves on. I was like, yeah, that's continuity.
For a minute, I looked at that panel. I'm like, when has Kate or Kitty Pryde ever dressed like that? And then like hours later, my brain got the rest of the way there.
Yeah.
Like that's okay. I forgot about that. I don't know how I could, but the thing is like this makes so much sense because I was also like, who is this? And then obviously because of the red and everything, I'm like, okay, that's Kate. Her hairstyle is different as well. So, but the thing is like it was that whole Quiet Council scene was spot on.
Yeah. Also, I want to point out, because we have Mystique Watch here on this program, where we always pay close attention to what Mystique says. She says, Orcus, don't forget about Orcus. Like, she's not going to let it go. She's not going to let go that they left, part of the station there. She's not going to, and also by not letting that go, she's twisting the knife a little bit on Xavier and Magneto to be like, and don't forget about that thing that you told me about my wife.
So was actually one of the point of the tarot card, because there was one that was like, that one tarot card was about someone is not getting what she wants or someone is not getting what they want. And she was the point of one of them, I felt.
That was the one where it says the 10 of swords. So basically it says betrayed by those you would show your back. Is that the one that you're talking about?
No, there's another one because I distinctly remember that. I wish I had the.
It's Eight of Cups, that someone is missing in their life. That one.
Yeah, like it felt like was it talking about her a little bit? I don't know.
That's the beauty of a good tarot reading is that you can interpret it like in any direction, right?
Or someone's heart has been left empty.
Exactly.
That's the Eight of Cups.
Yeah, someone's heart is left empty, and then it's her, right? Like, I mean,
not just her, I think, because I think the picture shows Genesis, which is Apocalypse's first wife.
Yeah, but
Yeah, but it could mean anything because, like, right now we have like 3 different readings of the same cards. We have the Free Comic Book Day reading,
Right.
which is different from this issue's reading, which is different from Tarot's reading.
So
So-
let's talk about that for a second. For all of you old school fans of Uncanny X-Men 281, where the Hellions get massacred, Taro is back and she's doing actual full data pages of commentary in her broken Franglish in this comic book. I mean, as somebody who appreciates this minor historical BS stuff, I was just getting my life on that data page. Like, I was so happy. Because people are like, how do you have a crossover about tarot cards and not have the? I mean,
Yeah.
her mutant power is tarot cards. She's one of Emma's students at Emma's Academy, and her mutant power is tarot card reading.
And she doesn't hang out with the Gambit at all. Like, I would feel like there's like that French connection that they would, but also like the card and everything. But they don't.
Well, she's
Gambit
the
is not
dead.
French.
So she's right, Tyler. There's two things. She's French,
dead.
and Gambit's not. He's just
Yeah.
Cajun. But also, she was dead for most of the past 30 years, the majority.
She was dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to get into the whole.
Yeah,
whole
but
dead
just
stuff.
a small segue, sort of like tangent from this is that like in this one issue itself, Tarot is not the only like deep dive characters that they brought back.
So who else would you put in the deep dive category?
Jim Jasper.
Okay, tell us about that, because I even for me that's a little on the obscure. I mean, I know we explain it.
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't know that character well, but I read him, I think, once in Excalibur, and he's someone who with reality manipulation power, and not the 616 character. I think in another universe he's a mutant with reality bending power as well. So he's one of those. He's one of those Legion level type of character. He can warp reality.
Yeah, and this is pre-Excalibur history, although there is some Excalibur era history. But this is in Captain Britain comic books when he was only in UK comic books. So that you'd be forgiven if you wouldn't know. It's collected in 2 mostly black and white hardcovers, and then also in the beautiful Captain Britain omnibus, which is hugely out of print. Maybe we'll get a reprint next year if Captain Britain gets hot enough. Fingers crossed. Because it's amazing. It actually is actually amazing Marvel Comics.
And then you have Roma and Merlin back.
Yes. Roma, I love Roma because she was really around when I first got into comics, and I thought it was like cool. I remember she had a trading card in the first Jim Lee trading card set, and I just kind of felt like an insider that I like knew who this random non-X-Men person was. Because technically Saturnine serves Roma, technically.
Yeah.
She like serves at the pleasure of.
Initially, right? But not in this iteration. This iteration
now
seems
she's in charge.
Yeah. So it's totally different.
Fariha's just like, you nerds. Nerds.
I'm feeling being in your presence. Ugh. Nerds.
Talking about characters we know and love a little bit better than some of these other ones, though. There's this first. There's the expedition that goes with Summoner into into the portal in X-Men 12. That was Eunice the Untouchable, who I legitimately actually really enjoy because he's one of these Silver Age characters that comes back, and Banshee. And the thing is, really, you're going to choose 2 X-Men and Banshee as your powerhouse? His whole recent history is dying. He's becoming the red shirt character of the X-Men.
And the thing is that even I know that.
Yeah, even Fariha knows that Banshee's going to get killed.
I know that. Do you know how bad it is when I know that? Like, especially like the whole X Factor, there was this whole thing where it's like his daughter, Siren, right?
Siren, yeah.
Siren.
Siren, Siren, she's like, oh no, he's not dead. He always dies and he comes back. Like, she has the whole thing where she was in complete denial, and then he was back. But to that point, though, I had a question. Do you think they left him alive on purpose so they know their plan? Because why Summoner didn't kill him? Because he knows that this place is filled with psychics or telepaths and all that. So why wasn't he killed, or was it like left alive on purpose?
That is a very good question. I don't know, Tyler. Do you think it was on purpose or by mistake?
I think it is the hook to pull the rest of the X-Men in. So they needed something to put them in and, maybe get them a little bit off guard. But I mean, it could go both ways. I mean, it could really be something else that is happening, but yeah, I don't know, to be
And
honest.
also, you think it's possible that memory is also planted?
I mean, anything's possible because Jonathan Hickman, but I also think that it's like at some point there's like a level of reader trust that you can't betray. Like if you kind of make everything a fake out for everything else, which he has done before, and that's why he's betrayed my trust. But if you do make everything a fake out for everything else, eventually you like can't take anything you're reading at face value. So I just for my own sanity, I have to assume that I can take some things at face value. So what him being involved gives us is Banshee, or is Siren, who's sometimes also called Banshee, going through as part of the recovery mission along with other folks. And I love when Monet is going through, and is it Emma or somebody's like, why would you go through? And she goes, I don't know, it sounds like a job I might want. I'm like, yes, Monet, dress for the job you want, not for the job you have.
I think it's Archangel. Archangel asked, I was like, okay, well, why? The question is her, and then they show Monet, and she's like, well, it feels like a job that I might want in the future.
I love that. That's probably Hickman because he does love her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it's Apocalypse who asks her. Now that I'm looking at.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's even funnier.
Even funnier. What are you doing?
No, but the way I was thinking about it, when I first read it, I was thinking that she wanted to be the to take over Saturnine's role.
Well, I mean that's a thing I would expect Monet to want. She's the lady in charge. She's the bee in charge.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It is disappointing though that she's not in any of the ongoing series. Like, is she? Like,
she was supposed to be in something called X Corp, but somehow that book did not happen.
Yeah, it was teased in the letter pages of Captain Marvel, and they said that Captain Marvel artist Carmen Canero, one of my MVPs at Marvel, was going to be drawing it. And then it almost was like you could see off camera, like the X office being like, and then it just never happened. So we get this expedition. So on one side, the expedition goes in and has this huge fight, which leads up to the betrayal we keep talking about. And the other side, we get Rachel and Cable, who are like, oh, let's like see if Banshee's okay. And they kind of pick up on this vision, this ominous vision. And they go to tell mom and dad. I love how they call, Jean Grey and Cyclops are just mom and dad now. It just makes me get so happy.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I actually enjoy Cable so much. The Cable's solo issue series right now is like, he's like, oh, mom, I don't have time for dinner. I need to change and go out and rescue this mutant baby that they kidnapped. I'm like,
Jean's like, have fun now. Don't forget to call.
Yeah.
Which usually I'm like a little bit against, like the marming of women characters to just turn them into a mom, and especially in comics because every kid gets aged up. So like all of a sudden you have this mom who's like, oh, I guess you're another one of my kids from the future. I was just reading some other comic other than this where that was really happening. I was like rolling my eyes, but it worked for me here because they also did it to Cyclops and I'm always into superhero dudes as dads, not because I'm a dad, but because I think it just creates inherent hilarity because they have to be sensitive in a way that they're not usually allowed to. And I loved it when they did for Superman. And I love Dad Clops. Dad Clops makes me really amused and happy.
So the thing is it like the first time that they're all in the same timeline and then this dynamic is being explored better? Because I know in my limited knowledge that he's from the future. There's all this very complicated thing that's happening with him. And he always was very older. Like,
Yeah.
Now he's like a teen, like, teen Cable.
It's like, very like, and Tyler can back me up here or not, it's very like missed connections. It's kind of like Rachel's somewhere, but she's old and Cable's young, but then Jean and Cyclops comes, but Rachel just died in the future. And that it's like very like, they don't all wind up at once. I don't know, Tyler, right? Yeah. Would you confirm?
I think so. I think the only time that young Cable and a really old Rachel was together was in that Ascani future.
Yes.
Where Cyclops and Phoenix went for their honeymoon. And, they ended up like all together. I think that was the only small period of time that they were together. And then
but not in an ongoing like this.
No,
they've
never been all in the cast of the same book before.
No.
Right.
That I can think of anyway. So then, in the struggle, we also get this great moment of Monet, I like Monet because she's kind of like a tank mage in gaming terms. Like she does everything. She's psychic, she's strong, she flies. And so she like gets all psychic and like tells off Saturnine, and then Saturnine just like shatters her psychic thing, which I think was like a nice kind of like establishing the scope of who's the big bad here.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
I also like the idea, like, it's kind of like that gif is like, can I mute you? And it's like, mute. Like, please. You're just
not just mute, pause too. Like Saturnine just pause them out. Like in mid-fight, she's like, okay, now it's my turn to appear. Pause. And then it's like, okay, your turn to speak. No, I'm going to unpause you now.
So before we come to kind of the big final page reveal, Fariha, favorite moments in here, characters you really enjoyed here, folks you're seeing for the first time, what's your assessment?
I think I really enjoyed Monet being in action, because I was kind of hoping that, I read like all of the other issues like very recently, and I was kind of sad that she wasn't in any of them yet. So kind of seeing her appear, and I also liked the Cables moment where it's like they went to this sphere thing, and then it's like, oh wow, that is it. It's like, oh, what is it? Like I'm like, that's exactly what I was thinking too. So and then so that was like really like a fun moment, and then also like the Quiet Council always takes the cake, so that would be mine.
Tyler, any big favorites for you?
I think almost the same as what Fariha was talking about, like the council moments, the moments that you just mentioned where Monet basically tried to shout at Saturnine and then got shot down. And then I mean these are the few moments. And then the very last reveal was really, really surprising to me, even though we knew it was coming. But it kind of like, okay, I did not expect it to come so fast. Like, this is just chapter 1, last page. And I was like, whoa.
Well, it is called X of Swords, but we're going to get that in just a moment.
Yeah, I know.
I really like this team. I think it's fun because they chose people that we aren't necessarily getting a ton of in the other books. Polaris now is in X Factor, and X Factor is going to be the next one up in the rotation, so it'll be interesting to see if it focuses on her. But I really enjoyed that moment of like, it is made of metal, because Polaris is a great character, and she's been through so much, and I think they just kind of like play her as the crazy character. It's like we're past that. I really enjoy this beat that Hickman has been playing of her being kind of Magneto's daughter and his confidant, especially since Wanda and Piotr have been wiped off of the Magneto's children list. So I just really enjoy when Polaris is used effectively. She doesn't have to be like a strong female character every time, but let's just use her for something other than just like being crazy, which I think she's being used here. So
and she's there under like, it's like, the House of M, like it's like she recently got a lecture too, which I get those.
She's the representative, since he's got to, because Magneto's like the hero of the people. I mean, we've got to address that, even though he's only a little bit here. He's become like the mascot of the island, based on especially like X-Men 10 and 11.
Definitely. I mean, he's definitely the one where they are like, he's trying to be push up to be the messiah or someone like that.
So I want to now talk about two kind of final revelations. First is Saturnine kind of breaks up the fight, and she shows that she's all powerful. And in a weird twist, at least I thought it was weird, she's like, great, there's 10 swords for each of you to find, and then you'll have a fight. I'm like, that's what the story is about? I had like a very like kind of moment. I don't know. What did the two of you think?
I kind of felt the same way. It's like, okay, so it's like a quest mission, because I feel like Avengers No Surrender was kind of...
Yes, that's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah, that's kind of like in the same way. And then often those never ends very satisfactorily. Like, because it's like, oh, okay, you're going to, like, the sword finding, it'll be kind of interesting. But the thing is, by the time they come back, it's be like, yeah, they're going to talk and they're going to fight and that's going to be end. So I'm not sure yet. So, but the thing is, like, it's like, well, who knows? Because hopefully this crossover changes some things, right? And the thing is, like, so I just don't know yet how this is going to play out.
I mean, I'm not sure if the listing of the names are talking about you have to go and find the sword or something. So that's the part which I don't know what happened. Like I genuinely I'm not very sure if like, okay, who is feeding them the names and why are they
Right, because it's
reading out
Polaris
those
saying
names?
it, and that was like
Yeah,
awkward. Like, why is Polaris like listing out these names of swords?
correct. So
And
is Saturnine the one that is like planting it in her mind, or like I don't know. That's the part which I got really I was taken out of the story because it was Polaris speaking that,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
that doesn't really sit really well with me.
Saturnine does do this thing where she like says, "Here's the card," and like see it in your mind. So when I went back and relooked at the page, I'm like, oh, I guess she's kind of granting them information. They're kind of expositing to us. But I agree, it just felt weird, especially because it's just this list, and clearly we recognize some of the names unless we all know the Soul Sword. And of course, if we've been reading Cable, we know he has the Light of Galador Skybreaker,
Yeah.
or no, the Light of Galador Skybreaker.
Yeah.
But I kind of just wanted a moment of recognition from one of them to be like, I know some of these names, or like we've just felt like it just felt like it would have felt more real if one of them had taken a beat to be like, there's more, you know, which I guess we'll probably get in some of the tie-ins because Cable clearly has one of the swords and we see him use it.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
just think it would have connected better for me if there was this moment of where they literally said there's more swords.
Yeah. I mean,
So this-
or they can just ask like, or instead of Polaris, if Psylocke is the one who went in, I mean, as in Betsy is the one who went in, she would have recognized the Sword of Might.
Yeah, and like, where was Excalibur? And I kind of was confused about where they
No.
were. Like, didn't we just end with them somewhere else in Otherworld? They'd like just, I don't know. I just was like a little, but then
Yeah.
Victor was part of the party. That definitely didn't work the best for me. So this was one of the weaker parts of the issue for me, was this whole gladiator sword thing. Fariha?
So are these swords like, coming from previous X-Men stories, or these are new implements?
Some of them.
Yeah.
So like the Muramasa is the sword that can kill people like Wolverine, right? It's like the sword that cancels out healing factor, and it's on both of their lists too. Which
Yeah,
is interesting.
it's both on the list. So the Sword of Might is the one that Captain Britain did not choose initially, but
Right,
chose
Sword of the Scepter.
recent. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Starlight Sword, I was thinking that it could be something that keeps appearing in Betsy's dream. So that was one of them. And then Warlock. Sorry, which one?
No, I was just saying, what about the one in X-Force? The end of X-Force.
Right,
What's
the
that?
Cerebro sword.
Cerebro.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which could be another, one of these could have a different name from that. And then there's also the one that split the two originally was the Twilight Sword, which here they call the Twilight Blade, so probably the same thing.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. I'm sure the internet is going to have checklists of swords. I hope that we're not going to do that, but you never know.
Yeah.
Right. I never connected swords with X-Men. Like, it's never been as a very casual reader. So that's why I'm like, tell me more.
I mean, the two of them are crossed. It's practically two swords. You could have been just reading this swordsman this whole time. And so where's swordsman? How can we do this crossover without swordsman? They just use them in Empire.
And you were supposed to say X of Swords or 10 of Swords because the card is 10 of Swords.
10 of
Swords of Swords? I don't know. Pog or Pog. Who knows who's making up these names. So let's now, the final reveal is Cable and Rachel give Cyclops and Jean this vision of this thing. It's like a ball and a square, and it's like, I don't know. And Cyclops is like, I know. And so they go through a gate, or no, they can't use a gate, and they use a transporter, in a clear Star Trek reference, I thought. And they wind up on the Sword Station, which is not only cool because it's a cool thing, and it's not only cool because it means we're going to get Abigail Brand, who I'm obsessed with, but it's cool because if you just read Empire, anybody here? Anybody just read Empire? Tyler? Yeah? If you just read Empire ends with Abigail Brand clearly wearing some X costume stuff and being like, y'all messed up big. And so this is clearly kind of connecting the X-Men to the rest of the Marvel Universe in a way that hasn't really happened for the past 12 issues. So I thought that was pretty cool. But Fariha, I know you were not caught up in that. Do you even know, have you read Sword Stories? You've read Astonishing X-Men, so you know Abigail Brand is.
Yeah, I know Abigail Brand, and there was also like a Kieran Gillen
great miniseries.
Yeah, whereas like, Abigail Brand and Beast is like a blue muffin, which was
No Time to Breathe.
Yeah.
So I mean, was
they-
this exciting to you? Like, did it have the impact? I'm afraid if some people maybe are like older lapsed X-Men fans, you probably know more than them, and it might not have hit. For me, it really hit. Did it hit for you?
no, I mean it's just like the fact that Soul to me is equal to Abigail Brand. So I was more excited about her showing up, but not so excited about the status of the sword, like station.
Status
That I was
offline.
like,
Yeah.
I was like, what does that mean?
Life forms
So
undetected.
Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
like what's that mean? So I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, but I mean, we have this crossover, even though it's called 10 of Swords or X of Swords, is 22 chapters. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be 22 chapters of sword fighting.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
Of
gonna
like,
be 20 in the middle chapters where they find 20 different swords, 10 for each side, and then one end chapter of it. That's
yeah.
actually what it's gonna be.
Yeah, I mean, if it is that, if it turns out that way, I'm going to be really disappointed. But I feel like there's going to be a bigger story somewhere, within this, and it's probably going to launch the whole Krakoa into a different direction.
Part of me feels a little sad about that because I'm like, I just wanted more of this initial Krakoa, this very idyllic Krakoa where everybody's re-meeting each other for the same time. Maybe that's reckoning back to our episode last week, why I love New Mutants so much, because I feel like it gives and also X Factor, because it feels like it's like very rooted in like how happy it is to be there right now. And I kind of already am having this FOMO of like, we couldn't have had an anthology book. Like we couldn't get anything more. We've already got to mess things up. But I don't know, Freya, do you? I mean, you love it when mutants are beautiful and safe and happy. Are you having that feeling too?
I think I was mostly kind of thinking that it's kind of difficult to say right now because this is just a first issue. We don't know how this is going to go.
Right.
But the thing is, at a certain time, the party will have to stop, and then I'm just kind of happy to see that it's not humans. Like, oh my God, humans are coming to take over. Like, thank God for that. It's not that. It's as of right now doesn't have to do with future yet. Who knows, but the thing is, like, it's just I'm just kind of excited to see like how this is. I never would have expected Apocalypse to be in the center like of the something that he's starting, and somehow he's on the good side so far, so I don't know. It's difficult to say. But the thing is, like, at the same time, like, we would need to move on at some point.
Yes.
Could it have been like when we get to issue 20 of every one of them? Maybe, it does feel a little too premature, but, just waiting to see where it goes. But the thing is, one thing I do want to mention, though, I felt like for the first time, the whole regeneration thing took the shine off when Apocalypse was killed. Or he was like, that's the first time I felt like, oh, well, okay, it means nothing.
So, well, also because whenever they're like trying to like get him back to the gate, I'm like, or leave his body there and go back. But I guess the fear is that if he's somehow kept alive because he's an external, that they won't be able to regenerate him. Like, as opposed to Banshee, who maybe it would have made sense to just slit his throat, like which has happened to him several times before, and to then just bring him back. Whereas with the externals, like maybe you just don't want to tempt fate. Is kind of how I read into that. But that could just be me fan wanking,
I mean, I feel like
it's just like their powers get redistributed as well.
So right, and it might mess up the gate because they needed like 4 of them to anchor the gate. And what happens if one of them dies? Like, there's other maybe reasons.
Right, but the thing is, like, I was like, that's what the first time I was like, oh well, that means nothing. And we also saw him coming back in Excalibur. Like, right. He just came back, so it's like, oh, well, that doesn't mean much.
Yeah, I know. His regeneration counter is just 1. I mean, as opposed to Quentin Quill, who's
right.
like 4
How many
or 5
times
now.
Quentin Quire died so far in the past 12 issues?
He's like 4 or 5 now. It's like almost every issue.
That was the running gag of the whole X-Force. But then there's also, because of a White Council, I would think that they already got the body done, and it's just like a matter of get you in.
Yeah, like maybe they've clearly Quiet Council members get first dibs on being involved.
He said that already. It's already established. In Excalibur, it's already established. Like, like, Report council member. I'm like, oh, okay, great. But
Yeah.
yeah, so the thing is like, I don't know where this is going.
But going back to that point, right? Like of Krakoa being idyllic and having fun and safe, like it being a paradise for mutants. I feel like the Krakoa as a nation is missing a lot of things. A nation should be doing, right? There is no, well, first of all, there's no city planning at all. People just planted like, oh, I want to sit here. I want to live here, and I would just ask Krakoa to grow a hut for me. There is no planning. That's the first thing, right? I mean, okay, but talking about that,
yeah.
I don't know who's planning.
No.
Look, we all have our kinks in X-Men comic books.
But more importantly, I think they do not talk about, or they do not think about defense. They are now all reacting to people attacking them, right? There's no talk about defense. There's no defense mechanism of the island. People plant gates anytime they want, and that allows for Trojan horse attacks, as we saw in X-Force and things like that. And and they only know that someone is attacking Krakoa when they landed on Krakoa, and Krakoa figure out that these are not mutants, and that kind of doesn't work if you think in terms of a nation, right? You don't just simply allow people to come in without checking, without quarantine. So that there has to be, they need to do things like that. There need to be a transit or whatever, right? Which they have established, but they're not using, because anyone can plant anything.
And I want to touch on that, and I actually want to go back to one theme from Fariha, and then we'll kind of lightning round to the end here, is the idea of like, I don't know how to quite articulate it, but this is just the beginning stage of Krakoa. Like, just because Xavier and Magneto established Krakoa doesn't mean they've executed the fullness of Mora's vision from HiX-Men, right? Like, we know that some of this aligns with Mora's vision, like having Apocalypse there and like having a Dynamo, but a lot of the things, it feels like we haven't fully revealed what it's supposed to become. Like, it's not in its end state. And I think that to me connects with this ideas of, well, we're just making gates everywhere. And right now it feels like, well, that's not well defended. And what happens if people come and go? And it's also like, well, we're just building houses everywhere. And it's like, well, what about the future of society? What happens? How are we supposed to interact? And part of me feels like that's being held back a little bit because we don't fully know Xavier and Magneto's plan. We don't have the full transparency yet. And so part of me gets frustrated because I'm like, great, another gate. Like, there's just a part of me that can't like that fully. But then part of me is like, let's remember the long game. Mora's in the no place, and Xavier and Magneto are doing their karaoke version of what she thinks the plan ought to be. And we don't know what that fully is yet. So that's one thing I wanted to put a pin on. But I also want to come back to something Fariha said is, as a longtime comic book reader, for the vast majority of my life, I sometimes roll my eyes at retcon developments, especially when they're a whole society. To go back and say that Apocalypse had this whole other life and a wife and this whole other land, and he came through the land, millions of years ago or however long ago it was. Like, part of me has to roll my eyes to that. And also I think there's an offhand mention here that of the second generation of mutants. I don't even want to get into that right now. Because they called him the first mutant. I went back and they called him the first mutant in HiX-Men.
In the second generation.
Yeah, in the second generation.
Yeah.
But part of me realizes, like Fariha said, it's nice to not always have humans. And that thing that you do when you make every story an encyclopedia of continuity, and you're like referring back, you bring back Bastion, you bring back Cameron Hodge, you bring back all of these people, is it just kind of starts to feel like the same story, and you have to do something big and different. And Second Coming managed to have those old characters and feel big and different, but it's really hard to recycle that stuff again. And so as much as like pedantic Peter's like, oh, really, like we're going to retcon in a whole society, whatever, actually it's a little bit thrilling. And having read this issue, I can actually like slightly forgive X-Men 12 for being like Hickman's Dungeons Master's Guide to this whole world, because we deserve this world. We deserve more history for mutants. We deserve things for them to do other than to fight humans. And if you think it's a little bit lame, grin and bear it like I'm doing for a couple of issues, because it's going to yield more interesting things for our characters to do a year from now or 10 years from now. We can't just recycle Cameron Hodge again.
And
that's been my PSA. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for attending my TED Talk.
No, but that is something.
My TED Talk. My Swords of TED Talk.
I mean, that's something that we all. I mean, at least I think most of us, not most of us, a fraction of us agrees that it shouldn't be the same struggle over and over again, because
Oh my God, come on.
yeah, because I think the problem is
Priya
because
especially, even as our newest member, feels that way for you.
yeah, but because Claremont has done such a great job in establishing that dynamics and that struggle, that every writer that comes after struggles to come up with something new, and yet trying to satisfy people who likes those things, and then you feel like it's recycling and recycling and recycling. And after like what, how many years is it now, 25, 30 years
Since what?
of the same story? No, I mean,
well,
of that kind of stories, like
Yeah.
over and over again in different type of iteration with different people, with different mutants,
well,
with
and the thing
different
that
enemies.
I think about right along that is that we've actually now crossed the point where it's been as long since Claremont's original run as X-Men even existed up to that point. Like, it used to be this overwhelming feeling of like, well, the majority of X-Men lore is Claremont lore,
Yeah.
but Claremont was from 1963 to 1991 was like the original Stan Lee, and then Roy Thomas,
Yeah.
and then Claremont, and it's been almost 30 years. It'll be 30 years next year since Claremont left. We're at year 29, almost to the week right now, and so that's existed just as long. So it's like we've got to stop just pretending like Claremont is the only X-Men story that's out there. So I want to lightning round through a couple things now to wrap up. First of all, we haven't really spoken specifically about the art, but we're Lara's lovers from HiX-Men. Something we said a lot together in HiX-Men was he has been elevated to be one of the great artists at Marvel right now. I don't think there's a bad panel on this whole comic book. Like, I truly think it is stunningly gorgeous.
It is. I mean, I think if we are going to nitpick, it's just that, Statue 9 and Emma looks almost identical. That's the only thing.
And that's a problem that he inherited, to be fair.
So I was kind of getting annoyed by that, but now that you mentioned that this is old, like, this has been done before, like, so I think that's more of a callback than anything. Like, that it just staying true to the history than anything.
And also these character designs for, what is your favorite of these character designs? The horsemen, the assistants, and I love the fish lady, the like attendant fish lady who's like, that's the way it is. That's how it should be. I just think that she's a really cool design. Again. Oh no.
Yeah, we got to wait for him to come back and then restart again.
We're almost done. Okay, it could be my computer getting slow now, which is why we're in the lightning round.
You're not back yet. Shake.
Am I back? I'm going to pause and unpause the recording. Hold on.
Okay.
All right, so can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
So let's start.
Okay. So one of the things I really loved in this issue was just the character designs. There's all these new things, the horsemen, the attendants to Otherworld. I love the fish lady attendant. She just was amazing. Did any other designs like really stick out to you as like, wow?
Well, I really liked the idea that, some of the older...
Yes.
Oh, shoot. No, I was just going to say that I really liked the idea that like some of the characters are more Egyptian themed, like, older Egyptian themed, which kind of falls in line with the apocalypse,
origin
and all of that. So I really enjoyed that. And then it kind of was thinking, I'm like, is Black Panther going to be involved sometime? But, you never know.
And so then the next thing I would say is, who was the MVP character-wise? Like, who won the day, sticks out to you, is like, this was the best of the issue for me? Tyler?
Monet?
Freya?
Monet. So far. Like,
yeah. It's Monet. I mean, she doesn't have the most to do here, but she just has so many memorable comedic moments and also memorable tough moments and she just stands out. You can tell Hickman loves her. And Tini Howard's amount of polish on the rest of Tini Howard, by the way, I'm a huge fan. If you've never read Ethernauts, which is one of her indie series with Nick Robles, who's if you do Twitter, Nick Robles is the guy who does the really impossibly hot night crawlers constantly that are like semi-X-rated. Nick Robles and Tini Howard has this series called Ethernauts that's amazing. All right, so we talked about favorite designs, we talked about favorite characters. Kind of just final wrap up. So good, bad. What's our final call on this issue? Freya?
Very difficult to say, but so far, really excited to see where this goes.
Okay. Tyler?
Yeah, I'm happy to see a straight up crossover. So I'm excited to see where this goes, especially with like the covers that has been revealed for issues that came after the crossover. It kind of hints at certain things that's going to happen. So I kind of enjoy it. I'm looking forward to it.
For me, you know, I go in with a lot of trepidation because I've been burnt by big Hickman stories before, but I think Tini Howard's like true north feeling of what characters should sound like really rewarded us here, and I'm just so interested to see how the other writers deal with this. I can't wait to see what Leah Williams does in a crossover that we get to talk about next week. I'm like deliriously excited. I can't wait to see what Jerry Duggan does. I can't wait to see what all of these writers do with this opportunity. So to me, that's the most important and the most exciting part. Like HiX-Men is only writing so many issues of this. We have a lot of other voices, and that to me is what's exciting about it being a direct crossover.
Definitely.
So look, we're going to try to be back we're not going to do an episode per issue, but we're going to try to talk to you every week, our availability and our internet allowing, about this. So if you have other things you wanted us to talk about, if you have continuity things that we missed because we don't have our beloved Zach back here from the Resurrection Protocols, they're still trying to crack that egg, leave a comment below, and we will be back to talk more X of Swords with you sometime around this time next week. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you know when we've got more our chat about X of Swords. Goodbye, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me, Tyler and Fariha.
Bye. Thanks.
And
Thanks for having us.